Hi, everybody, and welcome to my show, Allie at Heart and Soul Connected, and thank you for tuning in. Today, I would like to introduce you to a woman who, um, she was a freedom fighter. She was an awesome lady, and her name was Charlotte Corday. And in the times of the French Revolution, Charlotte was tired of dealing with a fellow by the name, or just, it isn't, she didn't personally know him, but she knew of him because he was a leader in the French Revolution, and his name was Marat, M-A-R-A-T. In fact, there is a painting of the death of Marat that I'm going to try to find and upload for you to see. And if not, you can also go on and put that into Google, Death of Marat, and you'll see Marat. Marat had a skin condition, and he had to spend a lot of time soaking in the bathtub. And it was something Charlotte Corday found out about. So I want to talk to you about what happened and why Charlotte Corday was such a instrumental person within many in the French Revolutionary times. So, as you probably well imagine, the French Revolution was a big time of upheaval, marked by the overthrow of the monarchy of the king and Marie Antoinette, and the establishment of an entire new order. This was the latter part of the 18th century. And at the heart of the revolution was a man named Jean-Paul Marat. And he was a radical journalist and a politician who played a significant role in shaping the course of events that happened and how they happened during this period of time. As the editor of L'Ami du Peuple, Marat's writings incited violence against those he perceived as enemies of the revolution, which made him a very polarizing figure. Tensions in revolutionary France were hitting a peak. They were running high with different factions that were vying for power and influence at the time. The aristocracy and the monarchy had long been targets of the revolutionaries, but as time went on, the violence and the bloodshed escalated. I just want to remind you that the story of Louis and Marie Antoinette is currently on the PBS Masterpiece theaters, and it's in the. I just finished watching the second season of it. It's very well done. It's I just really enjoyed it. It's one of those, I mean, I don't enjoy people having troubles and all that, but the way it's done is very, very professional and very well done. And it's worth looking at. And the name of this series is Marie Antoinette, just in case you're interested. So anyway, getting back to Marat, his advocacy for violence against those opposed to the revolution contributed to a climate of fear and paranoia, which ultimately led to his own demise. Sound familiar? There's a lot of this going on right now with many, many revolutionaries and advocacy for violence against those who oppose a tradition. The sans-culottes, a radical faction of the revolution, saw Marat as a champion of their cause, while others viewed him as a bloodthirsty extremist. As the revolution continued to spiral out of control, Marat's actions became increasingly erratic, fueling the flames of controversy. The divisions within France were not always just about ideology. They were also about class and economic interests. The burden of poverty, food shortages, and inequality weighed heavy on the common people, who began to see the revolution as a means to address their grievances. However, Marat's methods not only served to deepen the divisions, it also made it clear that something had to give. His inflammatory rhetoric had made him many enemies, and it was only a matter of time before someone decided to take action. As the violence escalated, Marat became more radicalized, calling for the execution of those he deemed counter-revolutionaries. This created a culture of fear where accusations and violence were used to silence opponents. The fate of the revolution hung in the balance, and Marat's actions were seen as a desperate attempt to maintain control. Charlotte Corday was a young woman from a noble family at the time. I would say she was in her 20s, probably. She had grown disillusioned with the violence and the chaos of the revolution, as one might expect someone to feel. She saw Marat as the embodiment of the terror that gripped France and believed that by ending his life, she could bring an end to the bloodshed. Corday was a fervent royalist who longed for the return of the monarchy and the stability that it provided. Her decision to assassinate Marat was motivated by a desire to restore order and to protect her family. Because if she was in the aristocracy, which she was, there would be people that would be taken down because of their status by these other revolutionaries. Corday's background was one of privilege, but she also rejected the luxuries of her class to take a stand against the revolution's more extremist elements. Her actions were guided by a strong sense of morality and a conviction that Marat's death could bring about a positive change. She traveled to Paris, determined to confront Marat, and on July 13th, 1793, she arrived at his apartment. Now remember, she doesn't know him. Corday's encounter was brief but deadly. Corday was admitted to Marat's apartment, where she found him reclining in his bath, suffering from a very bad skin condition that he would spend many parts of his day sitting in the bathtub to soothe. She stabbed him multiple times, with Marat dying shortly thereafter. The assassination shocked the revolutionaries, who saw Marat as a martyr and a champion for the cause. The aftermath of Marat's death was marked by widespread outrage and grief. The revolutionaries saw Corday's actions as a cowardly act of terrorism, and she was quickly arrested, put on trial, and then executed by guillotine. Marat's death marked a turning point in the revolution as his legacy continued to shape the course of events. The Jacobins, who had been Marat's allies, used his death to rally support and fuel further violence. So it's just, to me, one of those very interesting historical anomalies or comparisons in one time period versus another time period. Right now, astrologically, we are sitting in that lineup of all of those planets that were aligned during the time of the French and American Revolution. There's a good reason why these things happen according to astrology. And there's also the association with what happens to be going on again in this time period, and how this time period previews many things that have happened in the past. We are often told that those who do not learn from history are going to repeat it. They're doomed to repeat it. Who is the Charlotte Corday of the day? I don't know. Could this happen? Not saying it will. I just find it fascinating that Charlotte Corday, as a young aristocratic woman, believing that what she would do would take care of the issue, instead made this person more of a martyr for the cause. That's when something happens that the intention is one thing and the reality becomes a very different thing. There's an awful lot to suss out when you're talking about astrological conditions, but it is very fascinating that it takes a long time for these planets to be back in the same orders that they were in when they first occurred back in the French Revolution. And all I'm saying is that, you know, there were people that enjoyed the freedoms that they were given in many, many countries that were taken away from them by more, let's say, difficult people who took over and changed a lot of things that happened. Charlotte Corday thought she could do a good job, and she did by ridding everyone of this terrible man who was not a nice person in any way, but at the same time set her own fate into the hands of the courts and the guillotine. What is very important to mention as well is that in France, it's always been, at the time, it was always that public executions were things people went to, that they attended, that they took their children to, and no less what was going on in this situation. If you read a later book that was written by Albert Camus that I've spoken of before, we saw people were attending these types of executions well into the 1940s, maybe even later than that. And it reminds us also of where that comes from, which is the Roman lion dens. If you can see the threads, sometimes you can see how we have to make sense of things and how they come around over and over again unless we change the way we view things, or that we wake up and smell the very deliciously brewed coffee that's awaiting us. I hope you enjoyed, to an extent, the story of Charlotte Corday and Jean-Paul Marat, and that this illuminated a certain part of history that many people probably didn't know about. Thank you. You have a beautiful day.